New York City, 1915. Margaret Sanger has founded the National Birth Control League. Later, in 1942, after 3 name changes, it would become known as Planned Parenthood. In her first newspaper, The Woman Rebel, she wrote,
"Birth control appeals to the advanced radical because it is calculated to undermine the authority of the Christian churches. I look forward to seeing humanity free someday of the tyranny of Christianity, no less than capitalism."
She also published 3 articles on the necessity for social revolution and 2 defending political assassinations. Margaret Sanger was so militant that she was served with a subpoena indicting her on 3 counts for the publication of lewd and indecent material in violation of the federal Comstock laws. She then fled the country under an assumed name and a forged passport. In 1919, an article appeared in Margaret Sanger's magazine, The Birth Control Review. In it, she stated that her goal was to create a race of thoroughbreds by encouraging more children from the fit and less from the unfit. In her book, The Pivot of Civilization, she called for the elimination of human undergrowth, for the segregation of morons, misfits, and the maladjusted, and for the sterilization of genetically inferior races. In the years that followed, many other articles in her magazines would leave no doubt as to her racist views. A 1923 edition of her magazine spoke out on the restriction of immigration on a racial basis. In 1933, the Review published an article on sterilization by Ernst Rudin, who was Hitler's director of genetic sterilization and a founder of the Nazi Society for Racial Hygiene. Later that same year, she published an article by Leon Whitney entitled Selective Sterilization, which adamantly praised and defended the Third Reich's racial programs. Margaret Sanger was also involved in what became known as the Negro Project, in which they stated that the masses of Negroes, particularly in the South, still breed carelessly and disastrously, with the result that the increase among Negroes, even more than among whites, is from that portion of the population least intelligent and fit. The aim of the project was to hire 3 or 4 colored ministers to travel to various black enclaves and propagandize for birth control. Margaret wrote,
"The most educated approach to the Negro is through a religious appeal. We do not want word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population, and the minister is the man who can straighten out that idea if it ever occurs to any of their more rebellious members."
The project turned out to be quite successful. Scores of blacks across the country happily fell into step behind Margaret and the racists she had placed on her Negro Advisory Council. New York City, 1925. Margaret Sanger, whose organization would later be named Planned Parenthood, has organized a birth control conference here. She stated,
"The government of the United States deliberately encourages and even makes necessary by its laws the breeding of idiots, defectives, diseased, feeble-minded, and criminal classes. Year by year, more money is expended to maintain an increasing race of morons, which threatens the very foundations of our civilization."
Margaret Sanger has once again changed the name of her organization. This time she is calling it the Planned Parenthood Federation of America. One of the arguments for the new name is to convey a clean, wholesome, family-oriented image. However, she once denounced marriage as a degenerate institution, and in her book Women and the New Race, she said that the most merciful thing a large family can do to one of its infant members is to kill it. Washington, D.C., January 22, 1973. In a Texas case, Roe v. Wade, the Supreme Court today overturned all state laws that restrict or deny a woman's right to obtain an abortion.
Why are you carrying this sign that says "Stop the Holocaust"?
Because what's taking place right now is effectively the same thing which happened in Nazi Germany. Billions are being slaughtered. And
it's unlawful to destroy that egg of the bald eagle, but it's okay to destroy babies.
The Bible teaches us that we shall not kill. We believe in standing up for life, not for death.
Why do young girls like you feel so strongly about this?
Well, because it's an act of murder.
You believe abortion is murder? I'm marching here today because my mother didn't abort me.
Kids are beautiful. If they had abortion when I was born, I wouldn't be here right now.
Justice Harry Blackmun, author of the 64-page document, said that objection to abortion came mainly from two sources: the Oath of Hippocrates and Christianity. Since the oath specifically forbids abortion, the court wrestled with its influence, but concluded that, in the context of general opinion, ancient religions did not bar abortion. As for Christianity, it was dismissed by the court because of the so-called separation of church and state. In effect, the court omitted 2,000 years of Judeo-Christian influence and reached back into paganism to find a basis for its moral judgment. Justice Byron White dissented on the decision and said, "I find nothing in the language or history of the Constitution to support the court's judgment." America, late 1980s. For most of the past decade, Planned Parenthood shifted its focus from community-based clinics to school-based clinics and again targeted inner-city minority neighborhoods. Of the more than 100 school-based clinics that have opened nationwide in the last decade, none have been at substantially all-white schools. None have been at suburban middle-class schools. All have been at black, minority, or ethnic schools. According to U.S. Department of Health and Human Service figures, in most black communities today, abortions outnumber births by as much as 3 to 1. Dr. Alan Guttmacher, the man who immediately succeeded Margaret Sanger as president of Planned Parenthood, once said, "We are merely walking down the path that Mrs. Sanger carved out for us." Faye Waddleton, president of the organization during the decade of the 80s, has claimed that she is proud to be walking in the footsteps of Margaret Sanger. And the president of the New York affiliate is Alexander Sanger, her grandson. Thus, virtually everything that Margaret Sanger believed, everything she practiced, and everything she aspired to is reflected in the organization and program of Planned Parenthood even today. Ohio, September 1992. Dr. Martin Haskell has presented a paper on a new abortion technique called dilation and extraction, or DNX, to the National Abortion Federation. The DNX procedure is performed on late-term pregnancies and includes the following steps. An abortionist, guided by an ultrasound screen, uses forceps to deliver the entire baby except the head, which cannot fit through the opening of the cervix at this stage in pregnancy. The baby is then stabbed through the base of the skull with blunt surgical scissors. A tube is inserted to vacuum out the baby's brains. The skull collapses and passes easily through the cervical opening. May 1993. Senator Edward Kennedy was awarded the Kenneth Edlin Award by Planned Parenthood. Edlin was a Boston physician convicted in 1975 of manslaughter when he asphyxiated a 6-month-old preborn baby while performing a hysterotomy. Edlin separated the umbilical cord from the mother's uterine wall, but then held the baby in the womb, smothering it there. When the baby was removed from the womb, there was evidence of respiratory activity. However, Edlin took no action to save the baby.